Добрый день, друзья!
Good afternoon, friends. Today I would like to talk about improving digestion. Improving of digestion directly depends on how fully we solve the problem of reducing the influence of the factors that create overstress of the enzyme-forming system of the body. In the previous lesson, Healthy Nutrition, we outlined these factors, and now we'll talk about measures to reduce their negative impact on the digestive process. One of the features of digestive enzymes is that they begin to interact with substances only after their activation, which happens in the process of combination of enzymes with activating substances. For example, for amylase, which start to work already in one's mouth, an alkaline activator is in our saliva. To activate protease in the stomach, its juice must contain hydrochloric acid of a certain degree of acidity, while the third one, lipase, is activated in the small intestine by bile acids. Knowing these specifics will allow us to understand the logic behind our action and help us to come up with a more effective diet to avoid wasting our body system enzymes during digestion. In fact, we are now talking about a mighty reserve of health which we may well be able to use. Well, let's begin. The first one, in order, not in appearance, of the negative factors for digestion is an excessive amount of food entering the stomach. When this happens, the overstressed stomach will lose the ability to mix the food mass with substances effectively. In this case, the gastric juice will not spread throughout the entire volume of the food mass on time, and more specifically will not activate a sufficient amount of protease, the enzyme that splits proteins into smaller structures here. Because of this, the process of protein breakdown will be greatly prolonged, and the food mass passing into the duodenum will not acquire the necessary state for further digestion. All this will require additional supply of enzymes from appropriate glands in different parts of the gastrointestinal tract, and besides poor quality digestion, will also lead to wasting of enzyme potential that could have been used to improve our health. Ayurveda recommends consuming as much food at a time as fits in your handful. Well, consider whether you should follow such a recommendation. The second factor, harmful for nutrition and thus for our health, occurs when the principle of compatibility of simultaneously consumed foodstuff is not respected. When gastrointestinal tract receives food with different digestion times, such as fruit and meat, for example, or requiring treatment with juices of different acid-base composition, for example, cottage cheese and flour products, the quality of digestion and speed of movement of food in the gastrointestinal tract is reduced and will require enzyme-producing organs to release more enzymes. The result is the same: poor digestion and waste of enzyme potential. Usually, recommendations for food compatibility are presented with multi-dimensional tables, which are very difficult to use in daily practice. Therefore, I will offer you a simplified method of combining food in one meal. According to this method, you can eat almost all kinds of salads and other greens, white and red cabbage, kohlrabi, fennel, onions, garlic, cucumbers, horseradish, radish, and similar to it, vegetables, different varieties of peppers, sea herbs, leaves of different cultures with herbs, wild herbs, young leaves of cheese, and bushes, together with any food. The third factor, when food is chewed poorly, the amylase in saliva will not reach a very significant number of molecules of complex carbohydrates that are present in our food, and will not break them down. As a result, the state of the food mass passing into the esophagus will not be of quality for effective digestion in the following section of the gastrointestinal tract. If we consider that access to the food substances in poorly chewed food will also be difficult for other enzymes and their activators, the conclusion is once again obvious. The food will be digested poorly, and the body will constantly spend a lot of health potential for further processing of nutrition in order to compensate for our underprocessing of food in the mouth. The fourth factor, unorderly food intake disregarding circadian rhythms of organism, leads to slowing down and even interruption of certain vital processes taking place in our body, and instead redirecting that energy, which otherwise would be used to improve our health, to digestion. The result is hazardous effect to our health in terms of undernutrition, functioning of vital processes in our body, and wasting of enzyme and health potential. To avoid this, I recommend that you do not eat anything before 7 a.m. and after 7 p.m. You should be especially careful when flying to different time zones. Adaptation to the new circadian rhythms takes approximately 1 week for adults and about 2 weeks for children. During this time, it is necessary to gradually switch to a familiar diet, starting with a light form of it, smaller portions, easy to digest food. Moreover, you should not experiment with new and unfamiliar food. Fifth factor. Lack of sufficient breaks between meals means that new food mass is starting to enter our stomach, even though the previous food has not been properly processed yet. As a result, the food that entered earlier is being processed by certain stomach juices that are not suitable to process newly entered nutrition. Without going into detail, the process that begins to take place in the stomach in this instance are similar to those that occur when consuming incompatible foods. As discussed earlier, this results in wasting our health potential. The sixth factor. Chewing gums, synthesized drinks, pharmaceutical oral care products, and other products of modern civilization cause a complete useless waste of the most valuable enzymes for the body. And the harm just doesn't end there. For example, the use of toothpaste, in addition to wasting enzymes, also leads to the destruction of symbiont microflora in the mouth, which main purpose is to keep our teeth healthy by suppressing the development of pathological microorganisms. From my own experience, ever since some years ago I began brushing my teeth with only soft brush, water, floss them, and occasionally use baking soda with coconut oil, my dentist at prevention checkups noted a notable improvement of overall condition of my teeth. The seventh factor. The depletion of food from its own food enzymes is aggravated by the fact that the heat treatment of food brings their content practically to zero. The consequences of that was practically demonstrated over half a century ago by Russian academician Ugolov. He took 2 vessels filled with gastric acid of a predator and placed a cooked frog in the first one and a raw one in the other. In a few hours' time, the raw one completely dissolved along with the bones, while the boiled one underwent only superficial changes. What happened was that the first frog was dissolved with the help of its own food enzymes, activated by the predator's gastric juice, a phenomenon called autolysis. The same applies to foods of plant origin. The cooked frog, having neither its own enzymes nor those coming from outside, did not dissolve at all. According to the law of adaptive secretion of digestive enzymes, if food depleted of its own enzymes appears in the gastrointestinal tract, it will require an increased amount of enzymes from the enzyme-forming system of the body to be digested. Thus, all the negative consequences to our health that I mentioned earlier. There are several ways to counteract this negative effect. Today we will discuss one of those ways, specifically combining cooked and therefore depleted of its own enzymes food with foods that contain enough of food enzymes. Furthermore, these foods must be compatible with each other. Before we proceed to the practical part of our lesson, let us recall the so-called French phenomenon, in which a very intemperate nation is one of the healthiest in the world, both in terms of food consumption and quantity of consumption. Having eaten in Paris restaurants and observing their culture of food intake for over 2 years, I have seen how these people eat. Their menu usually includes many raw or semi-raw foods, including animal products, especially seafood, spicy cheese, a lot of herbs, malted sourdough bread, only freshly made mayonnaise, wine, olive oil, mustard, various spice balsams, etc. Sitting at the table, they chew their food for quite a long time, talking leisurely with their companions, and after almost every portion they swallow, they take a small sip of wine. To understand the French phenomenon, it's enough to pay attention to three circumstances, which are: proper chewing of food with the addition of a small amount of wine allows the enzymes to process the maximum volume of food mass in a timely and qualitative manner. 2. Taking their time during food consumption, without haste, which ensures that the food mass is brought to the necessary condition in each of the working areas of the gastrointestinal tract, with initial stage of the process initiating during chewing. And the third one, all of the food they use contains many of their own food enzymes, which allows them not to overload their enzyme system and not to waste health resources during everyday meals. Here's a ready-made system for you. Take it and get healthy, my dear friends. And the last 8th factor I will cover in a separate lecture, and will address the issue of inhibitors of digestive enzymes. Well, let's now get to the practical part. In the first lesson, I've shown how we can enrich beef soup with digestive enzymes. In a similar manner today, I would like to demonstrate how we can enrich buckwheat porridge with non-starchy boiled vegetables, in this case Brussels sprouts, celery stalks, leek, fennel, onions, bell peppers, and tomatoes. The porridge and vegetables have been cooked already and therefore are practically stripped of digestive enzymes. We will add enzymes to the dish through adding additional products that have abundant amount of food enzymes in them. I've listed them in my previous lesson, Healthy Nutrition. A part of those products we will use to prepare our enzyme-rich sauce, and the second part we will add to the porridge in chopped up form. To begin with, let's warm up on a dry pan a mixture of powdered spices to your liking. In our case, those are turmeric, fennel, and black pepper. After appearance of a rich smell, we should add melted butter. Thus the following effect will be achieved. Nutritional substances from our spices will be melted into butter. Next, we add boiled vegetables to the heated butter, followed by adding buckwheat porridge, and mix this all up in the pan. Warm this up to the desired temperature for consumption. Now, let's move to preparing set of ingredients for our sauce. Place in a container vegetables fermented in a water solution of rice or dough without salt. In our case, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, leeks, celery stalks, fennel, daikon radish, carrots, beets, and parsley. In this container, we now add garlic, fresh turmeric, ginger, lemon, a mixture of aromatic herbs, more melted butter, the mixture from the pan, other seasonings, and spices to your liking. Furthermore, pour in herbal tea, coconut water, or natural coconut milk, or just boiled water at the very end. Tea can be made from therapeutic herbs recommended by experts. I often use tea from mixture of herbs recommended by Avicenna, all of which have a positive effect on the metabolism. For the mixture, we take 1 part each of the flowers of chamomile, linden, and black elderberry, half of the peppermint herb, and 1/4 of the ground fruit of fennel. Now, we shall grind everything with a mixer, bringing the sauce to the desired thickness by either adding the mixture from the pan or liquid. Serve the dish with the porridge on the sauce or under the sauce. Generously sprinkle on it chopped up fresh vegetables, Chinese cabbage, celery stalk, bell peppers, any green salads and herbs. The result is a very light but at the same time rich with enzymes, fiber and vitamins dish. I highly recommend you to prepare any of your porridges according to the same principle, and you will be definitely healthy. Thank you for your attention.